It's time to pull those belts tight, race fans. The front stretch is coming at you, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Now, here's Dan Taylor and Dirk Houston.
Well, good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. Fast-paced white-knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs. Head over to Joe's Karting, kartingwithak.com, for hours of operation today, the day before Memorial Day, one of my favorite holidays in this nation. We finally get to pause and honor those that have served. So for those of you who are listening that are serving or have served, a big thank you goes out to you guys. You owe us, or we owe you a thank you every single day. Yeah. But the last Monday in May is always our day to make sure that we do that. So if you happen to see a
veteran,
one of those hats, they usually have the Navy hats. Those are always predominant this time of year.
Veterans.
Stop and thank them for their service. It's amazing how much that means to a service member just to say thank you.
Yeah, I know my brother really enjoys it. He's retired out of the Air Force, and when somebody says it to him, and I know I bought some lunch a year ago for some guys. It was about Christmas time, and they couldn't say thank you enough. It was really weird, you know, because I'd never done that before, but now I've kind of made it a tradition. And if it wasn't for all those people, veterans, active service members, we wouldn't be able to do what we do, and the sport that we love of auto racing wouldn't even be around.
Right. And I'm always amazed. I go back and watch a lot of the military history stuff that, I'm a big fan of the Band of Brothers and all the documentaries. I always watch some of the Ken Burns documentaries on Vietnam and World War II and even World War I, Civil War, and it's amazing what those guys go through. Oh. It is absolutely amazing what they'll volunteer to go through. I mean, even at basic training, when you're in America, you're safe, you're being treated, you're being trained.
You're not going to die.
Right, but it's still terrible stuff, and it's thank you. We can't say it enough. All right, we got a lot to cover for today's show. It's going to be a lot of conversation. Turn number one, we're going to talk about the All-Star race. Not for too long, because we don't want to put you back to sleep after waking up after that race. And then we'll cover some of the news topics that have popped up throughout the headlines up until we recorded Thursday afternoon of this week. In turn number two, we're going to recap the Go 50. Didn't think it was going to happen. Started to happen. Didn't think it was going to happen. Kept happening. Still thought it wasn't going to happen, and then we saw one hell of a race.
Yeah, I mean, for anybody that didn't bother to go down for the 3 hours, and thanks, Joe, for running those late models to make sure they got the show in before the modifieds. I mean, I know everything worked out, but very good track. That little bit of rain did not hurt the track one
It helped.
bit.
It helped. We'll get more into that into turn number two as far as how that whole thing unfolded. And then in turn number three, we're excited. Dirk, we're doing this in advance. We don't normally get to do that. We are announcing our next Crewman for a Day contest at Iowa Speedway, and we'll announce the team that it's going to be with, the way the contest will unfold, and all that happening is coming up in turn number three. And then in turn number four, is this the greatest day of motorsports today?
It used to be when guys would try the double.
Yeah. It's a great day of motorsports because you're going to be able to kick things off with the Indianapolis 500 today, and then later tonight you have the Coca-Cola 600. And if you're a dirt track fan like I am, and I cannot wait. This is my favorite race of the year. Hands down, all racing, all auto racing, anything of all. This is my favorite race of the year. That's the Charlie Clark Memorial at I-80 Speedway.
Yeah, you like the pit stop. I don't know what about an Iowa boy liking a pit stop. That's a strange deal.
I like the idea of the pit stop. I think it's interesting, but what I like more is the inverted field. That's honestly, I always say that it brings the best racing action. I don't know why. I'm kind of playing dumb. I know why. It's because the cream that rises to the top that first 22 laps is now starting 13th, 14th on back.
Well, what it amounts to is for those first 22 laps, that leader is hammered down, even though he knows he's going back to the middle of the pack somewhere. Yeah. But the more cars he puts a lap down, the further up that middle of the pack is.
Exactly. And he gets $2,022 for winning that first segment, then the pit stop, and then they could get another $2,022. But we'll get into all of that coming up in turn number four as we preview today's racing and the weekend to come. So, all right, turn number one, thoughts on the All-Star race. So leaving Kansas, another 1.5-mile track, they've struggled at times with clean air is king. And we both agree that that was probably one of the top 5, top 3 races at Kansas Speedway since the track opens up. I guess I shouldn't say we agree. I think that. I think do you agree with it, Close?
No, because when the track first opened up in 2001, they were still under the old race rules. There were not near as much aero on the front of the car. There was no splitter, any of that stuff. You know, the car tomorrow hadn't been done yet in 2001 when the track opened. So the racing the first couple of years was much better, in my opinion.
It was far improved when we went there for the Go Bowling 400 just a few weeks ago.
Correct. It was a good race.
I left that race feeling hopeful for the rest of the 1.5 mile races in the rest of the circuit because of the new downforce package that takes away less downforce. It's less aero dependent. Still way too aero dependent, but it's less aero dependent than last year's package. And then we get to the All-Star race, and listen, full disclosure, I watched a little bit of it, and I couldn't. I had to turn it off.
I watched every lap.
The next couple of days on Facebook, the next couple of days on Facebook, when NASCAR, Fox, and NBC are promoting what happened during the qualifying races as some of the best racing action, I knew I didn't need to go back and watch the rest of the race. Now, Eric Jones's battle during that qualifying race, during what was it, the Open, the All-Star Open, that was awesome. And that goes to show you that the pass in the grass will never work again. And by the way, I despise that name because he didn't pass.
In the grass.
He just went into the grass. Yeah. And for some reason, somebody called it the pass in the grass, and it's stuck. And I hate that about it. But Eric Jones ripped off the front of his car, and his day was done. He ended up, I think he cut a tire, or he ended up getting a tire rub or something like that. But that battle between those 3 cars was absolutely amazing. And then Ryan Newman, during his qualifying run, when they were doing that really cool, take a couple of laps and they got to come down pit road.
With no pit road speed.
Yeah, and
coming in hot.
The way he saved it was phenomenal. I mean, that was awesome. But that was the only 2 clips I saw of the race weekend. And I thought, that... And since then, I've tried to watch a little bit of it, but it's just, unfortunately, at Charlotte, it is so aero dependent, and it is a fast track. I was talking to a couple of people at the Go 50 about it because, normally people just like to criticize, but they were talking about ways to improve it, which I thought was kind of hopeful that the racing action the first 11 races have been good enough that they now are kind of putting a vested interest into the sport again.
Well, they had no upper groove, so it was, if you can run the bottom, you are going to tear it up. A few guys tried to fight through the middle of the track but couldn't. The oddball tire thing kind of turned into a joke. Ends up being, you'll never see that again. But
it's funny. I was so hopeful that would be a good thing, and it turned out to be such a bad thing. I'm kind of sitting here going, I got a lot to learn.
Well, yeah, I told you I didn't think it was a real good idea. But what they're doing for the 600, as we talked about, they're putting their
what's that? The VST or something like that?
VHT, the traction treatment stuff on the top of the in through the top groove of the track and working it in, and it'll be there if they don't have any rain. But why didn't they try that on the All-Star race?
I think they were just as surprised as everyone else at how bad the All-Star race was.
The All-Star race, the temperature was cool and everything, and once, it got dark out, I mean, the track was bad fast. Oh, it was up there. The guys liked racing it.
And there's a certain point, when you start pushing those miles per hour a little bit higher, now you're doing 211 into the corners, now you're doing 213 into the corners. When you start pushing that, the aero dependency on those cars increases exponentially.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the major problem. A lot of people are talking about, what I was kind of referring to it when I was talking to people to Go 50, they said, forget about this sexy thing about the 200 miles an hour. Let's cut 50 miles an hour off these cars, 75 miles an hour off these cars. Who cares if they only go 125 or 150 if the racing is amazing? And when you back them up a little bit, now maybe not that severe, but when you back them up to more realistically 175, 180, they're less aero dependent, and all these cars are able to start working around each other and start really moving, passing, shaking, and moving again.
Well, I mean, we've talked to a few guys, and Carl Edwards just flat told us a few years ago, let's get the aero off these cars, get these splitters off of there, put the front back to a valance like it used to be,
Yeah, I think NASCAR is just they're in love with the 200 mile an hour thing.
Well, they put the crew chiefs in such a box.
Yeah.
I mean, if one guy invents one little thing, man, they're so quick to ban it instead of letting everybody catch up, which is what they used to do. And, so there is no real need for a crew chief or any innovation
I
anymore.
completely disagree. I think those crew chiefs are finding little things, but where NASCAR jumps in and polices it very quickly is when it starts costing teams a lot of money.
It never cost them a lot of money to pull that back fender out in front of the right rear tire. It didn't cost them a dime.
It cost a lot of guys wins because they would come off the corner and just rub a little bit, and that fender being flared out would cut the tire immediately.
Yeah, but you didn't know.
Ergo, Jeff Gordon.
You didn't know if it was the fender that flared out or if it was the exhaust pipe that sticks out that cut the tire down. The exhaust pipe is still sticking out, and tires are still getting cut down.
Yeah.
So
I like NASCAR policing in that sense because, like I said, we've talked about this, and you've mentioned it before. When the Cup Series doesn't have a full field, that's a bad sign. And I think that's the biggest sign that what NASCAR has been trying to do over the last 2 years, which is really rein in the cost of owning a Monster Energy Cup Series team, an Xfinity Series team, and a Truck Series team, is because they're getting word from these owners that we just cannot afford to race anymore. The purse payouts aren't enough, and the sponsorship dollars are tight, and it costs way too much to come to the track each and every weekend, especially if you're going to be competitive. So I like that NASCAR jumps in every once in a while and says, no, you're not going to be doing this transformer back ends where they're swerving up and down the back and they're resetting these shocks or resetting whatever they're doing. You're going to conform to this, and we're going to make sure that it's a level playing field.
Well, some of that stuff's okay, but that's not, like I said, not like a little body modification of flaring that fender out. Everybody could do it, and everybody was doing it. Stuff about where you've got a special shock package that will lock in when you get it to a certain pressure and not let the rear end come back up, and so you got to bang the car around to get that back. I mean, that's something totally different. To me, that's changing the actual mechanical ability of the car,
right.
And that I don't care for. But, again, it's been around for a long time. It's nothing new. But
so the All-Star race was we'll bring it back around as we're getting into a couple of minutes left of this turn. That was a rough All-Star race. Any hopes that things will be completely different, or at least a little different in a good way, for tonight's race?
Just if that stuff works and gives it an outside groove. That's the only improvement I can see. I still think you're going to see, with 100-lap segments, that means they've got to have a pit stop in there. And hopefully, as in last year, there'll be a lot of green flag pit stops, which it changes up the field. It might not change the leader, but there's a lot more pressure on these guys. So you're going to see a lot of pit road speeding penalties, I'm assuming. I'm going to guess there's going to be several. Guys are going to push the limit. You're going to see mistakes on pit road, so you're going to see penalties on pit road, with missing a lug nut, a crewman over the wall, any of that type of stuff. And so the race is going to change, but you're going to see your short-run cars, like you have in these mile-and-a-half races, like Ryan Blaney at Kansas. Very good short-run car, but he'd be out in front for 20 laps, and then Truex would chase him down and take off, know. So, and you're going to see your long-run cars. Brad Keselowski's usually a long-run car, and Kyle Larson's usually a short-run car. So, and
Charlotte typically has long green flag runs.
Well, the World 600 does. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, for the guys that get the long-run cars put together, you're going to see some neat stuff, and these guys get the balance of their car good. And the guy that goes out for you fantasy racers, go look at those 10-lap averages now.
Yep. When we send out the stat sheet.
That's going to be big this week. If you see some guy that qualifies to middle to the back, but he's got a real good, one of the top 10-lap averages, he's going to have a good shot at doing well in this race. And the other thing that's going to be interesting is now that he's got 600 miles, is Jimmy Johnson even going to go to qualifying tech? He might just go ahead and start dead last and show you what it's all about. I mean, that's the only thing that it's one of the things, I should say, not the only thing, but one of the things that made Kansas so interesting was watching from the 30th spot. You had Johnson, you had Boyer, you had Casey Kane, Chase Elliott was back there.
Earnhardt,
not
did you say Earnhardt?
Yeah. Earnhardt was 35th. But
I think Kane was too, wasn't he?
No, Casey Kane, I think. Was it Kane or Elliott? One of those two.
I think it was Kane.
I think Kane started somewhere in a decent spot. I think it was Elliott. There were 3 of the 4 Hendricks cars all started in the back.
Well, and that's what made it interesting was watching those good cars, those typically front pack cars, make their way through the front.
And that's why
Johnson took all of 9 or 10 laps to get up into the top 15.
Yeah, and I mean Earnhardt followed him through there pretty well. Earnhardt had a top. He was 6th or 7th in 2 of the 3 practices. And probably would have made the final round of qualifying. Might not have.
Yeah.
But he was definitely going to start a lot higher than 35th.
So yeah, that's why I think we just need to invert the field every NASCAR race.
Well, that might be kind of interesting.
Like the Charlie Clark. That's what I love so much about the Charlie Clark. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we will talk about the Go 50. We'll recap that race, play some audio from our night at that track, and get interviews from first and second place finishers. And then turn number 3, we will announce the Crewman for a Day contest at Iowa Speedway. We'll wrap it up by previewing the Coca-Cola 600, the Indianapolis 500, and the Charlie Clark Memorial at I-80 Speedway tonight. We'll be back here on the front stretch. I want to cover a couple of the news topics that have circulated around NASCAR. One of them that I want to get to real quick, Stewart-Haas Racing and Nature's Bakery have settled their lawsuit, their $31 million lawsuit. Nature's Bakery announced it earlier this year, or notified Stewart-Haas, we're not going to honor our final 2 years with Danica Patrick, and so Stewart-Haas Racing sued. And according to court documents that were filed earlier this week, the two have reached a tentative settlement that is for an undisclosed amount. One thing you were kind of talking about before the show got kicked off, you wanted to make sure and cover was the supposed loose lug nut. I haven't seen factual information yet. I've seen a picture on Facebook, which I don't take that to any kind of
NASCAR admitted it.
But they did.
But NASCAR said it's an all-star race, and there was no penalties until 3 lug nuts were loose.
So it doesn't even matter if it was.
It was not a points-paying race.
Yeah.
So how can you take owners' points away when they didn't even give them any?
That's a good point.
So yeah, it wasn't a points-paying race. So everything's kind of out the window here. If there would have been some major infraction, they might have done something. Now there was an infraction for the 24 team over at GMS. They got 10 owners' points, 10 driver points, $5,000 fine. Crew chief got kicked out for a week for ride height violations taken after the truck race Friday night. They took the trucks back to the R&D center. Of course, the race was right in Charlotte. The Speedway is about 3 miles from the R&D center. So they got into that and in a timely fashion and got the penalties and out.
More news that are circulating around. Regan Smith will be in the car this weekend for Eric Almirola for the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. They have not announced any future plans for Eric's replacement. Again, Eric is set to be out for another 8 to 10 more weeks after suffering that injury at Kansas Speedway. The 5 people to be honored for this year's NASCAR Hall of Fame were announced. Red Byron, Ray Evernham, Ron Hornaday Jr., Ken Squire, and Robert Yates were the 5 people that are going to be inducted into this year's NASCAR Hall of Fame.
All deserving.
Absolutely. Landmark Award for outstanding contributions to NASCAR goes to Jim France, who was Vice President and Executive Vice President of NASCAR, is also Chairman of the Board for International Speedway Corporation, also known as ISC. Let's see. I think that pretty much does it. Well, there was one more we were just talking about. What was that last one we were talking about? Making sure to cover.
24 truck and the lug nut.
We already forget now? Okay. Well, that's going to do it. We're going to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 2. We're going to recap the Go 50. Turn number 3, we will talk about the Crewman for a Day contest. Then turn 4, we're going to preview all the racing action for today. Stick around. The front stretch just getting kicked off on AM 590, Omaha's front stretch.
You wanted the best? They're coming 4 abreast. It's the World of Outlaws Craftsman Sprint Cars. The premiered winged warriors battle it out. The World of Outlaws Superstars. The greatest show on dirt is coming. The World of Outlaws Craftsman Sprint Cars are coming to Eagle Raceway for the Eagle Nationals. Tuesday, June 13th, racing at 7:30. Exchange a receipt from a participating Napa Auto Parts store for a $5 off general admission ticket at the gate on race day. To buy tickets, go to slspromotions.com.
Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs has taken a page out of IMCA's rulebook and gone crate. These brand new low-emission engines will still have you white-knuckling it all through the Metro's fastest indoor facility. Joe's Karting is now friendly for all skill levels with their brand new Honda-powered engines. It's time to get to Joe's today and find out what drivers like Jack Dover, Shaylee Bate, and Andrew Kosiski have known for years. Located in Council Bluffs and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K.
We're hooked up in turn 2 and still showing the green flag on the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch, heading into turn number 2, and it's time to recap the Go 50 at I-80 Speedway. This was the second attempt at the inaugural Go 50. It was planned for this time last year, and Mother Nature had other plans, and it looked like she was going to have other plans for Tuesday night's race earlier this week for the Go 50.
She is an evil woman.
I tell you, it was a wet weekend, and because of that, I didn't get to work at I-80 on Friday or Eagle on Saturday. So instead, I got volunteered to tear up my kitchen floor and start working on that remodeling project. I thought to myself, it's going to take about a day and a half. I'll be done Sunday afternoon. By the way, I think I'm still doing it. We recorded on Thursday. I'm about halfway done with the kitchen, and by the time this airs on Sunday, I may be 3/4 of the way done. It's a much slower process than I expected, but
it's a good project to drink beer with.
No, because I have to deal with straight lines and even measurements, so I am not allowed to drink.
Well, that's not a good deal anyway for you in straight lines.
I know. It's been a very, very frustrating couple of days. But so it rained on Friday and Saturday, and then it kind of was nice on Sunday, had a little bit of rain on Monday, and there was plenty of rain forecasted for Tuesday, but the weather meteorologists here at KMTV, our friends over on the TV side, were telling me that, it's going to rain, but where it's going to rain was the big question. And so we pretty much just played the waiting game all day. I got out to the racetrack at about 4 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon, and as soon as I got up into the booth, got all my stuff set up, I looked out the back side of the speedway. What would that be? Probably northwest? West-northwest.
Behind the speedway.
Right.
Okay. Yeah,
behind the announcer's booth.
Northwest.
And you could just see it coming, and I'm like, oh, man, of course I get everything all set up. I'm all ready to go, and here comes the rain. And sure enough, about 20 minutes after that, the rain came in, and it was pretty solid. And I remember I texted you and said it's raining. I said it's raining.
Just started to rain at the track, 5:01.
But if it stops now, I think they can save it. Because it did. It stopped just minutes to seconds after that.
It was like 5:04 when you texted me back that it stopped.
It looked like Steve Kaziski, who does the track prep there, had just laid down a thick layer of water about 2 hours before the race. And then he always lays it down and lets it soak and then go about it. And that's exactly what they did. It rained good. And you could see the moisture in the track, and it was sitting in the track, and then it kind of soaked in, and then they started working it, and we only got the show started about a half hour late, if that. And then during the hot laps, there was some more sprinkles, and the sprinkles came throughout the night, but then it all cleared up, and it was an absolutely gorgeous view out over the speedway. It was chilly.
Yeah, it was. That wind was cool. The wind was cool because it was so damp. I mean, it was only like 50 degrees.
Yeah.
But it felt like it was about 30. But still, if you didn't come out, you missed some fantastic racing.
Oh, it was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing to watch, that whole racing action. And I really liked that there was only 2 classes. Sometimes Joe Kaziski has a problem with he wants to make sure people get their dollars worth. So he'll throw 3-4 classes onto a bill, and it could get a little thick. And
Tuesday, the midweek race, he was
absolutely
wise not throwing an extra class in there.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I thanked him earlier for throwing those late models in front of the modifieds at the end to make sure they got in, because, again, you didn't know when more rain was coming.
Right, and really, most of the people are there for the late models.
Absolutely.
The majority of the people are there for the late models. And he's had this conversation about the Super Late Model Touring Series presented by Malvern Bank. He'll talk to promoters when it gets started late, and he says, hey, can you move us up on the bill a little bit? Because the late model people don't want to always think that it's going to be a late night when they come to your track. They're here for the Touring Series, and he's been turned down a couple of times, and he's been accepted a couple of times. And whenever they accept it and they go with it and they move him up on the feature lineup, it always works out in the best for him. So that was one thing I know he's very good about, is paying attention to why people are there and making sure that they get out of the speedway at a reasonable time.
Well, he's also got, and just as all the other promoters do, I mean, they want to make sure that they got people there till the end of the races buying beer and having a hot dog and all that kind of stuff. So if the stand's empty out and you still got 3 features to go, that's not a good thing for anybody.
True.
So that's all got to be worked out. And I think these guys, everybody's, learned a lot about promoting, and, I'm not trying to pat anybody on the back, but Craig Kelly innovated some of this stuff. And out at Sunset Speedway, and a lot of guys have taken notice on it over the years, and trying not to have 100 pace laps. Let's bring the cars out and start the race.
Yep, absolutely. And I think it It really paid off. I don't know if Joe anticipated this happen, but there started to develop some ruts and bumps in turn one and two, especially the last couple of laps of the late model feature and then into the A-Mod feature. It got pretty bad.
About halfway through that Go 50, those two in turn one was on the high edge right on the berm, and the other one was another 20 yards into the turn, so right towards the end of turn one and in the middle of the track.
So I think if they would have left the bill normal, A-Mods run first, Lucas Oil last, that we'd have had a much different turnout because that track would have been more locked down by the time the late models hit the track, especially after the A-Mods tore it up a little bit with their chassis.
Narrow tires. You know, they don't have the tires the late model guys got. Believe me, if the A-Mods would have run, they would have had to take a little bit of a break and try and work those holes a little bit because they developed, and that was nothing anybody could do about that. That was the rain. You know.
And again, we kept saying it all night. I don't mean to talk bad about it because I have a lot of respect for what Steve Koziski does at that racetrack with that racing surface, but he produced an amazing track for the hand he was dealt.
Well, for the heats and everything and the qualifying, when I got there in the middle of qualifying, and I just stood down by the fence and watched them run into turn one and just whack, and gone. And it was like, oh my, this is going to be good.
They were running during the Lucas Oil qualifiers. The time trials. They were running 16.8s, 16.7s.
Well, pole was a 16.3, I think.
Ungodly fast. And Scott Bloomquist, who ended up winning the event at the end of the night, was running 17.1s late in that feature with about 40 laps done, about 10 laps left to go. He would occasionally put down a 17.1, a 17.3, 17.2, and then he would slow down a little bit.
Well, he was in lap traffic by that time.
Yeah,
and
he was still laying down incredibly fast times.
But I was there with a buddy, and my buddy used to race, and he thought they were very fast, and he's never seen Lucas Oil before. But I got him to watch Bloomquist, and I said, just look at him. He runs the exact same line every time. He was staying 2 car lengths below those bumps, so the guys had to try and go up there to pass him. Satterley one time there, about 20 laps to go, he got in that first rut, and he got her clear up on 2 wheels, and it spooked him. He never came close to that rut again.
Zigler tried a couple of times. He had the faster car on the high side, but those bumps kept slowing him up, and he'd have to lift coming out of 2. It was really interesting to watch. We just grabbed the audio because, so the way the night ended up unfolding, you and I were texting back and forth. They ran the Lucas Oil feature first. That kind of restricted our ability to get down there and do any kind of interviews. So I kind of cheated, and I just grabbed James Essex interviews from the night over the PA, and we'll play that back. So here was James Essex sitting down with Scott Bloomquist right after their feature win.
Good race. Congratulations, Scott. It's a cold one out here, but I tell you what, you took the lead. A lot of restarts out there, but that car was really, you couldn't get any better than that, could it?
No, we had just a slight push going into 3 on the brakes, but the car would rotate on the throttle so good that I just go ahead and let it push a little bit and just catch it with wide open. And car was awesome tonight. Andy Durham engine ran really good tonight. It's just track was really good tonight. So
worried about the right rears? No cutting, no siping on that. Were you worried about it here late in the race?
Well, I knew it was the same for everybody, so it really didn't matter. Did feel like it got a little bit greasy on some of the restarts, and didn't refire quite as good, but I don't know, our car felt pretty good all night.
Well, no doubt about it. You had a good lead there. Zigler gave you a run there a few times. I tell you, without him, how about the great job by the track too? Joe and everybody here does a great job. This race was about to be postponed here about 5 o'clock. They decided they was going to run it, and it's good for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad when we're out on the road like this, and we need to make some money, and it's good to be, have promoters that'll go ahead and push the show through. Track ended up being awesome. I mean, he really did a great job with it. I really love coming out here and racing. It's one of my favorite racetracks to come to.
I was trying to calculate how much money Scott Bloomquist has made off of the Koziski boys. Because I think the Silver Dollar Nationals he won was $35,000. I think when he won the second one in a row, that was $40,000 to win. So there's $75,000, and he won $11,000 on Tuesday night, $10,000 for the purse, and I think he won some contingency money.
Well, I was thinking he won 32 and 35. I thought Superman Davenport won the 40 grand.
That could have been.
And then they were bumping it up to the 53 this year. I think that's how that went. But still, he's taking home a chunk.
How couldn't he love that track when he's taking home almost $70,000? right at about $75,000
Well.
from them. I'd love any track too. I don't care what it was. But other thing I was amazed about is how out of breath he was when he got out of the car. It wasn't an easy race for him. He was working hard behind that wheel. And Zigler talks about it in his interview. He expected, with how rough the track was becoming, that Bloomquist would start slowing down and coming to him because he'd be exhausted from working the wheel so much. But that never did end up happening.
Well, no, like I said, he stayed well below. He never came close to those ruts. He hit one of the ruts passing a lap car down in turn 1, but he was a full car width lower than both those ruts, and they were not affecting him.
Here's Mason Zigler. James Essex sat down with Zigler after for his second place finish.
As Mason Zigler comes home, it's dinner tonight. Great run tonight.
Thank you, I appreciate it. We worked hard on it today, trying to get it back together. We tested on Sunday, and we had to go to S&S, had some truck things that we need to take care of, and we really weren't even going to come, but we got her here, and we were happy we did.
This track was wide open here tonight.
Yeah, it was crazy. I really got a lot more respect for Scott at this point. I mean, I thought once I got to him, he'd get tired, because it was rough. I was even getting a little tired, and I tell you what, he stayed up on the wheel.
Quite a few laps here tonight. You were faster than him during the feature.
Yeah, I felt good. I just felt like I had to really push it on the cushion, and where he could come off the cushion, you know what I mean, and sort of take his time and not push it so hard. And I felt like we really had to push it on the cushion to get a better lap time than him. But he would have had to really screw up to do something wrong. I think if we would have made an adjustment or two, we would have been a lot better. But first time here, we'll take it.
You had a lot of fun out there tonight, didn't you?
Yeah, it was fun. Everyone ran me clean, and it was nice to see Greg and them up front too with us. I raced with them a lot back home, and just to see the guys who race at home with me competing and running up front too, it goes to show a lot about our talent from our area.
And he was talking about Greg Satterley, driver of the number 22, and finished fourth. So your finishers, Scott Bloomquist gets the win, $11,100 payday. Mason Zigler comes home second. Earl Pearson Jr. third. Greg Satterley and Tim McCready round out the top 5. Josh Richards, Darrell Lanigan, Don O'Neill, Steve Francis, and Dennis Earp Jr. round out the top 10. Couple of big wrecks that we had that night. Chris Simpson took a heck of a tumble over out of turn number 2. He was coming up on Hudson O'Neill, who had slipped coming out of turn 2, had gotten out of the throttle to recover his car, and O'Neill was in the process of sliding up the track, made contact with Simpson. Simpson's car gets turned nose towards the infield. His tire hooks, and he starts tumbling head over. You could see we shared the video of it from Dirt on Dirt on our Facebook page if you want to go back and watch that. But yeah, that was a pretty crazy wreck. Most of the night was pretty clean, and then we got to the feature, and there was a lot of restarts for Scott Bloomquist to fight off those guys.
Oh, yeah, but he just hammered down every one of them. Yeah. One thing I was interested in, and I don't know if you've heard anything, but I didn't find anything on it yet, was Mike Marlar with his situation when he came out of turn 4 and jumped out like he got hit with a dirt clod or a chunk of lead or something.
That's exactly what happened. I haven't heard if it was a dirt clod or a rock. I've actually heard both, but they told us over the radio in the announcer's booth that it was a dirt clod. He was pretty confused when he got out of the car, but that was one of the first things I noticed. He was battling Scott Bloomquist for that lead, and he was coming through turns 3 and 4, and all of a sudden, he didn't come to a rolling stop. He came to a all-on brakes stop. His window net was down, and he was out of the car, helmet off within seconds. And that's when I said, his helmet's already off, and James Essex said, I wonder if he took a dirt clod to the face. And sure enough, he was sent to a hospital for monitoring and eventually released. He's going to be fine. But
he's got his bell rung.
That's scary stuff. I think back to when Bill Layton Jr. took one to the face, and he had to have surgery to fix some broken bones in his face. And you don't think about that with these guys, that the dirt clods don't get that big and they're not coming that fast, but that's absolutely the case.
Well, I mean, Scott Carlson, a local racer, got hit in the throat with one at Harlan several years ago, and that was an ugly deal. I saw Gary Webb get hit and crack his helmet with a chunk of lead that got through the bars. But, I mean, those bars, you got the 4 of them across the windshield, and the guys don't like the screens because they would catch this stuff, but they fill up with mud and you can't see. Right. So it's, if I was behind the wheel, I'd be running the mud or the screen, and if I couldn't see because of the mud, then I'd deal with that. But I'd rather do that than have one of these big rocks hit me in the head.
Local drivers, when they finished in the inaugural Go 50, J.C. Wyman out of Griswold finished 15th, Tad Pospischel 16th, Ben Schaller 19th. And that looks like a majority of the local guys, how they finished. But, Great race. I was really impressed with it. I think that once again, the Kaziskis gave the Lucas Oil guys a track that they could race on. And it was something that the reason why we're having a second Lucas Oil date is because all of the Lucas Oil guys, when they came for the Silver Dollar Nationals, begged Joe and Steve for years, please add a second date because we love coming to this track. And I think they proved it last night, on Tuesday night. 36 cars, 36 or 32 late models in the field.
32 late models.
And 39 A-mods. It was a good field. I was actually surprised. There probably would have been more like 40, 45 if there wasn't so much rain in the forecast and a couple of guys decided I'm not going to make the haul. But a great night, and can't wait for the Go 50 next year.
Well, there were a few guys. Kyle Burke stayed away with his trailer issue. You know, they're working. He follows the Malvern Bank Series real well, and, obviously has a few championships there, so that's big for him. So he thought it would be best to not show up with just one car, and, if he damaged that, then he'd have been in trouble. So over in the other series. So that's why he stayed away. Like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of local talent there.
Right.
So.
All right, that's going to do it for Turn 2. Recap of the Go 50. We'll come back in Turn number 3, and we're going to announce our Crewman for a Day contest. We'll be back here on the front stretch.
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located just north of Bass Pro Shop, Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 100-plus people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team building, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
This week's young gun on the front stretch is Ryan Jenkins. A third-generation driver, Jenkins started racing 11 years ago in karts, then made the move to a B-mod in 2014. Last season was a breakout year for Jenkins as he picked up track championships at I-80 Speedway and Adams County Speedway. Ryan won the 2016 Division III NASCAR National Championship and the UNOH Youth Achievement Award. During the offseason, Ryan made the decision to purchase a Rage chassis and try his hand at A-mod racing. His season goals for the 2017 season are modest: get a feel for the car and lead a few laps. His career goals include more track championships, a Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series championship, and to tour with the Lucas Oil Late Model Series. Ryan plans to run weekly at I-80 Speedway and compete at any special event in the area. Keep your eye out for the C&H Construction Gosler Farms Karstens Investment Council number 6 of Ryan Jenkins as he makes his way to the front of a dirt track race near you. The young guns on the front stretch are brought to you by I-80 Speedway, home of the Silver Dollar Nationals. Tonight, the Stars and Stripes will wave. And the green, white, and checkered. It's the 9th annual Cookies Barbecue Sauce Charlie Clark Memorial. Spend the holiday weekend with the area's best stock car, modified, and sprint car drivers at Nebraska's premier racetrack. Adult tickets at $15. Kids, just $5. Located just off Interstate 80 at exit 420. Get your adrenaline pumping tonight with the 9th annual Cookies Barbecue Sauce Charlie Clark Memorial at I-80 Speedway. Be there.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the front stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into Turn 3 on the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch. Heading into Turn number 3, brought to you by SLS Promotions, bringing you the World of Outlaws, returning to Eagle Raceway June 13th. Get your tickets in advance, slspromotions.com. The World of Outlaws Sprint Car Show is finally returning to the High Banks and the Bull Ring of Eagle Raceway. Again, get your tickets in advance now, slspromotions.com.
And if you like the World of Outlaws, you can talk to the drivers in that series and any fans in that series, and this is one of the favorite tracks. They get around there in 11 and a half seconds, and they really fly. And with a full field of cars, they are in lap traffic in like 4 laps, and that's when these guys are fun, when they're slicing and dicing.
Absolutely. Again, get your tickets now, slspromotions.com. Coming up next weekend, we're going to sit down with Johnny Gibson, announcer for the series, and get a recap on what's been going on for the last for the 2017 season. And then we've put in a request to get David Gravel to come on the show and talk about going to Eagle Raceway, and we'll get some kind of skinny on that if David's ever raced there before, what he's raced in, and what he can expect coming up on June 13th. All right, it's time to announce the Crewman for a Day contest.
Dun, 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 dun.
Really excited about this. So when we were down at Kansas Speedway a couple of weeks ago for the Go Bowling 400, we had the opportunity to sit down with Edward Williams, the marketing director for Iowa Speedway, and say, hey, we've been doing this Crewman for a Day contest. It was a really big success with Kansas, and we want to do it at Iowa Speedway. And as they are at Iowa Speedway, they were all about it. So he approved it as far as the track side of it was concerned. And then, Dirk, you've been working with a couple of teams to get the team side of it done, and who have we locked down?
We are going to work with David Starr, and I've known David for, it's got to be getting close to 20 years now from his days back in the truck series. But you're going to get a lot of insight if you have a couple questions when you get to meet this guy. As you know, and if you listen to the show, we've had him on the show several times, real people person. This is a guy that lost his ride a year ago and went out and pounded the pavement and put something together.
And what a great conversation we had with him after that about how to manage sponsors so that when something unforeseeable like that happens, they've got your back.
Yep, you got to keep your nose in front of them, grind every day, and that's the way David did it. David, because we talked to him, and I said, well, you're in the twilight of your career. How about being a driver coach? He goes, I'm a race car driver. I'm not a coach.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. And he made sure he was able to get back behind the wheel. But we've been working with Jessica, and they've got a couple interesting things that they want to do if depending on exactly who gets wins the contest and whatnot.
So when we were talking about who we were going to go after for this, the cold hard honest truth is that someone sexy like Richard Childress Racing, when you hear that as a part of this contest, you think, oh, that's so cool. But the sexier the name on top of the bill, the less you're going to have access, because they have obligations and they've got some things that they've got to kind of keep a little secret and kind of take care of some things. So the access wouldn't be as much as it was going to be with David Starr Racing. And that's why we wanted to go with David, was because, to be honest, you're going to get as close to the action as you can possibly get without actually becoming an employee of this organization.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit more about what you and Jessica have talked about. Some of these listeners are going to have the opportunity if they're physically or willing able.
Well, it came down to when Jessica and I were talking. Again, they're a lower budget team. And they've been doing some stuff. David's from Texas, from Houston, and a big burger franchise that's basically based in Texas but does get in other parts of the country is Whataburger. And she's hoping that they've got Whataburger on the car up here. She goes, but it's too bad we don't have a restaurant in the area, because when they were at Texas, she goes, we must have had $500 worth of Whataburger food in the trailer all day. And it's pretty decent stuff, but it's your Hardee's, your Carl Jr., whatever, Burger King, McDonald's type franchise. But, they're really helping David out, and he's had some other stuff on the car this year. So she wasn't sure exactly what was going to be going on in Iowa. But like she said, we're an underfunded team. So she said, are these whoever's going to be coming to us and observing and everything, is it going to be somebody that could maybe hold the pit board or something? And I said, well, yeah, it could be. But, we've got people, that might not be physically able to do that, but if they are, I'm sure they just love doing that. And she goes, because it's not very hard. I do it at some of the races. This is a PR lady out there holding the pit board, folks. So I went ahead and volunteered. So if we have a winner that can't cover it, I'm going to go ahead and hold the pit board for them. I told them I'd carry the jack if they wanted me to, but I'd have been better at it 20 years ago.
That's a video I want to get. No. I didn't actually record that in slow motion. That's just Dirk.
Yeah, that was full speed. All 12 steps of it. Yeah.
How did you get him to move in slow-mo, but everyone else is fast-paced? Well, that's just the way things work.
Well, like I told Jessica, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have needed the jack. I'd have just gone over and lifted the car up. But, those days are gone. But, and I know David wouldn't run me over because he'd have to reclip the car. So I know I'd be like hitting a concrete wall. So that's not going to happen.
So the Crewman for a Day contest is going to be at Iowa Speedway for the July 28th and 29th race weekends.
The 28th is a K&N race. That's a Friday night. And the Xfinity race is Saturday afternoon. So if you want, and what I would recommend that the winner be looking forward to is to try and take Friday off work. Go ahead and book a motel room if you think you're good at it. Like if Mr. Gray's listening again, 3 winners in the last contest, you might as well go ahead and book your room. You can always cancel it later. But, look up the Super 8 up there in Newton, decent hotel. That's where we usually end up staying. Stay away from the American Inn. Was that
God.
All American Inn?
America's Best Inn or Best American Inn or something. Nothing to do with the best.
You don't want to go to that place. Matter of fact, we actually left. When we came back from Knoxville, we were going to do the national show from there the next morning, and we just loaded up. We stopped on the way, grabbed all our stuff, and drove back to Omaha the 3 hours.
Yeah, that was it. But there should be rooms still available. But like you said, everybody is going to win a pair of tickets to the K&N race on Friday. Those are going to be grandstand tickets. I've already got them in-house. They're already ready to go. And then everybody but the winner is going to win a pair of tickets to the Xfinity race. Obviously, the winner is going to get 2 garage passes to be in the Xfinity garages and running around with the David Starr team that day. The way the contest will work, we're announcing it today, but it doesn't kick off until June 18th race at Michigan. It will last for 5 weeks, and then we will have a winner with the conclusion of the race on July 16th at New Hampshire. Whoever is the contestant with the most amount of points at the end of that race, barring any ties or any penalties, will win the grand prize. You're going to have then 2 weeks to make hotel and accommodations, and we will contact you on Monday and make sure that you are physically able and willing to take part of the contest. It's a cool thing, but if you don't want to do it, you are welcome to pass the prize down to the next person in line.
And you can take the grandstand tickets and sit up in the stands and enjoy the race. And showtime permitting for us, we can't book our show quite that far in advance, but as we did with our first contest winner, we brought him in studio, got him on the show, and if we can set that up again, we will try and do that.
Yep. So it's going to work just like our last Crewman for a Day contest. We're going to pick the 5 races between Michigan and New Hampshire. You're going to submit on the NASCAR pools online, which, by the way, if you were a part of the contest last time, the Kansas Speedway Crewman for a Day contest, then you should have an email in your inbox. If you want to get involved in it now, you can email us frontstretchradio@gmail.com. I will send you the link and all the contest information as well as the rules, and you'll be all set. It's free to enter, thanks to Rick Havenridge of Wealth Partners, who presents all of our Crewman for a Day contests and all of our fantasy contests. He helps us pay for that bill, and we appreciate Rick for doing that. And then so it's free to participate, and you can win some awesome prizes. You're going to get some swag from David Starr. I know our winners, Chris and his friend down at Kansas, got a lot of great stuff from
Mittler Brothers.
Mittler Brothers. Thank you. I completely drew a blank there. From the Mittler Brothers and their race operation.
And they got some neat. They did some neat stuff that Brendan's people didn't do. I mean. Mike's PR guy took them up, and they got to go up the spotter stand. Yeah. I've never been to the spotter stand.
I tried.
I got to go there.
I got stopped.
And they said, "Oh, you don't look like a spotter."
Yeah, those eyes, you're not a spotter.
Yeah, but and they got to do that, and they. Mike, being a smaller budget team, doesn't have near this giant pit box that you see on Sunday on TV. He's got like a spot for 3 people up in his, and one of them is his spot. But he did let them get up and sit down, a little bit on some, yellow flat lax, so they could at least see what was going on up there and get a feel for it, which was kind of neat.
What I think they liked the most about it was not only they were able to work with the team, but then when the team was busy doing team things or not doing anything, they were able to walk around the garages and kind of experience everything. The security is a little bit more laxed at Iowa Speedway with being able to go places because the Xfinity Series is the big boys in town that weekend. So your passes are going to get you a lot of different places. And I highly encourage, like Dirk said, take Friday off of work, go over on Friday and experience everything there is to experience out front. There's then a concert on Friday night after the K&N race for you to enjoy over in Turn 4 up on the stage over there. You can go and see all of the manufacturer stuff, the fandom, merchandising tents, enjoy all the food. They've got amazing food there at Iowa Speedway.
Yeah, there won't be near as much stuff on Saturday with the race at 2:00. That means qualifying is going to be either 10 or 11, somewhere right in there. So if you get there, the garage will open at 6 in the morning. You can go over. They'll be working on the cars, getting the final setup in. because they impound the cars after qualifying. All they get to do is like a track bar adjustment and retape the nose and take some air, do air pressures on the tires. So there's not much they do after that. But there'll be a full thing of qualifying, so you'll be able to go through with the guys qualifying. And, you can ask these guys, exactly what are they checking here, and they'll explain it to you,
And Dirk and I will try to go through tech inspection with you, because that's one thing that you're really good at, is explaining that kind of stuff if the teams aren't.
Well, yeah, I mean, the teams, like I said, if you ask them, they'll tell you, but it's just something that's what I did for a lot of years, and so, I'll be more than happy to tell you what they're doing. It's not a secret. It's, not like it's, in a black book somewhere and nobody gets to know. But the public goes through there.
And food, they'll feed you too.
Yep.
When you get there, they'll feed you. Probably going to feeding you breakfast if you get there early enough, lunch, and then, the race will be over with by dinner, so that'll be for you on the way back.
Yeah,
But,
Dan and I thought we were doing good in Kansas in the media center. Would we have hamburgers when the guys were eating steaks over at the truck?
Steak sandwiches. So, again, you can email us frontstretchradio@gmail.com to get involved in that contest. Thanks to Rick Haven-Ridger Wealth Partners for making sure that contest is free, and thanks to everybody at Iowa Speedway and David Starr Racing for coming together and helping us do this. frontstretchradio@gmail.com. Send us an email, and we will get you to be a part of the contest. You can also message us on Facebook if you want to get information about it. We're going to take a break. We'll come back at turn number 4. We will preview the Coca-Cola 600. We'll preview Indy. We're actually going to do that in chronological order, so we'll do Indy, then the Coca-Cola 600, and then we'll preview the Charlie Clark Memorial. So we'll be back here on the Front Stretch.
You wanted the best? They're coming 4 abreast. It's the World of Outlaws Craftsman Sprint Cars. The premiered winged warriors battle it out. The World of Outlaws Superstars. The greatest show on dirt is coming. The World of Outlaws Craftsman Sprint Cars are coming to Eagle Raceway for the Eagle Nationals, Tuesday, June 13th, racing at 7:30. Exchange a receipt from a participating Napa Auto Parts store for a $5 off general admission ticket at the gate on race day. To buy tickets, go to slspromotions.com.
Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs has taken a page out of IMCA's rulebook and gone crate. These brand new low-emission engines will still have you white-knuckling it all through the Metro's fastest indoor facility. Joe's Karting is now friendly for all skill levels with their brand new Honda-powered engines. It's time to get to Joe's today and find out what drivers like Jack Dover, Shaylee Bate, and Andrew Kosiski have known for years. Located in Council Bluffs and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K.
It's checkers or wreckers as we enter turn 4 on the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs.
Welcome back to the Front Stretch, heading into turn number 4, brought to you by Quaker Steak and Lube, the official watering hole of the Front Stretch. They just released a new menu with a bunch of summer items on it, so you can head over to Quaker Steak and Lube today. You can watch the Indianapolis 500, enjoy a little bit of food, some beer. You'll sober up by the end of the Indianapolis 500, take a little bit of a break. The Coca-Cola 600 kicks off, and you can get sobered up and fed up again.
You don't take a break. You go ahead and you eat and have a few beers, and then when the Indy's over, you walk across the street to Joe's Karting.
There you go.
Walk across the street to
go.
Joe's Karting. Run a few laps. When you're thirsty again, you walk back over, have a few more libations, and watch the races.
The official watering hole of the Front Stretch carries every NASCAR race, and I'm sure they're going to have the Indianapolis 500 on today, too. All right, let's talk. So we're going to do this a little bit backwards, unlike I just said. We'll talk about the Coca-Cola 600, kind of preview that. I want to talk about the Charlie Clark, and then if we've got time left, we'll preview the Indianapolis 500. So let's talk about the Coca-Cola 600. Longest race on the circuit. That's kind of its shtick, is that it's you have to set your car up for the nighttime. Well, you don't have to, but it's much easier to set it up for the nighttime and have a bad car the first half of the race. And then when the sun goes down and everything cools off, you've got a much faster car and you can make your way back through the field.
Just don't get too far behind.
Right, because if you set your car up to be neutral and you're hoping you can adjust on it, that's going to be tough to do because there could be long green flag runs. You don't have time to put wedge or take wedge out of these cars to free them up or tighten them up or do whatever you got to do to make it better to the driver's ability. So
everybody's in the same boat.
And this is an incredibly long race. I mean, to say that it's usually about a 4.5 hour race broadcast.
It's so long, NASCAR added an extra segment.
Yeah, an extra stage to add more to it and to hopefully break things up a little bit more.
Well, but the one thing they did here that, again, is they haven't mentioned any other races this year, just this one, is they made 4 equal segments, which means I'm thinking that after stage 2 or whatever, if rain would happen to hit, the race is over.
Yeah,
I mean, it'd be back to the old rule, basically, because you'd be halfway.
Right. According to the rules now, it's not a mile or a laps they have driven. It is after the completion of the second stage that the race would be considered official. And so with this, you would assume, that it would be the same thing, which coincidentally would be halfway.
Even though most of the other races, it's usually, 60% of the race, because it looks like they're going 30, 40% is kind of what it looks like.
Yeah, and they talked about that when they set up the stage lengths, was that was kind of the rough estimate, but then they also went back and looked at every track and said, what are the fuel runs? What are the green flag runs? Can we kind of mess with people's strategy just a little bit? So you're right. That was the base, was 30, 30, 40, 30%, 30%, then 40%. And then they kind of tweaked some of the tracks. And obviously they took exception to this one because it's such a long race.
Yeah. And, and where I feel about making one track rule changes, middle of the season rule changes, stuff like that. I don't care for it because now this one race, if you sweep it, is worth 70 points instead of 60 like the other 35 races. So, that's my opinion. But obviously NASCAR, again, failed to call me and ask.
I think they lost your number. Maybe send them a text.
Oh, no, they still got my number. I talked to Jim Cassidy in Kansas City. He's one of the top dogs. They still got my number.
Coca-Cola 600 tonight at Charlotte. Coverage, I believe, is going to be on Fox Sports 1.
I do believe it is, and it's the standard players. This is the race last year that Martin Truex led, 392 of 400 or something like that. But obviously Jimmy Johnson loves this track. Your usual players are good. The Gibbs cars can be good here. It's just anybody's guess on that certain night. And like I said, now with the traction treatment being put in the top groove, that adds a whole nother flavor to it. Now,
absolutely. Who's
going to be able to figure that stuff out? I mean, obviously, Kyle Larson loves it up there, but he proved last week in the All-Star race he can run the bottom. So
let's talk about the Charlie Clark Memorial. I can't say it enough. It's one of my favorite races at I-80. This is a special format race to honor the driver of the number 22 modified in throughout the area that passed away several years ago. And
by the way, Dan, do you like this race?
Yeah. I do enjoy it. And just to go back, I want to correct something. Today's broadcast for the Coca-Cola 600 is actually on Fox.
Oh, that's good. Everybody will get to, more people will get to watch it. Not everybody, but more people.
All the picks are due by 5 p.m. Central Time today for this race. And we took last weekend off, so don't forget to send your pick in. All right. The special format for tonight's race for the Charlie Clark Memorial at I-80 Speedway, they'll set the feature field by heat races and then final qualifiers and all that fun stuff.
Passing points.
22 cars are going to start this race. Again, the entire theme for this race is 22. 22 laps, 2 minute, 22 minute, 2 minutes, 22 second pit stop. 22 laps, $2,022 to win each feature. $4,444 if you sweep the weekend. So it's, again, the theme is 22, and the way it all works, they'll start the first laps, and you always have guys like Jordan Grabowski, Dylan Smith, and Chris Abelson that come out.
Johnny the Jet.
Jesse Sobbing's going to get back in one of his A-mods probably and come out and race this race. It brings out some of the best A-mod drivers our area has to offer, and I think we have some of the best in the country to offer. They'll run the 22 laps, and then they'll all line up on the front stretch so that you can see it. And they'll run a chalk line down the middle of the front stretch. Crews line up on the pit side. Drivers line up on the grandstand side. And then they sound a horn, and they have 2 minutes and 22 seconds to make any adjustments.
Yeah.
If you can change an engine in 2 minutes and 22 seconds, you can change an engine.
What you'll see a lot of is maybe a shock adjustment, and you'll probably see, depending on how the track holds up, you might see a lot of right rear tires.
That is actually what I saw a lot of last year, was changing that tire to give them the fresh grip on those on that car.
You'll see some add fuel. Depends on how their chassis is handling. You see some guys might just put a piece of lead somewhere. You'll see others add the fuel because the fuel will burn off.
Right.
So as the track changes, the car will lighten up again, but the driver just might say it was real good at the start of that 22 laps, so let's put some fuel back in it. And
so then after this horn sounds, they go along the backstretch, and then every lead lap car is inverted. So whoever wins the first segment goes back to the end of the lead lap. Anybody that's lapped in those first 22 laps is stuck at the end of the back. And so it's usually, I think Grabowski started 14th or 15th last year. Maybe it was in the 16s, but Then he made his way back up into the top 3, was able to get enough points. So it's broken up by, there's 2 different segments that you can win, but then there's passing points that they calculate your finishing position for both races, not passing points, excuse me. Your finishing position for both races gets you your total points at the end of the night, and then that is the overall champion for the Charlie Clark Memorial. It's a really interesting race, but again, what I love the most about it is that inverted field, and then you get to watch these talented drivers work their way through the field in some amazing racing.
So if you want to be the winner and you want to be sure you're the winner, just go win both segments and you don't have to worry about it.
Absolutely. All right, we went a little bit long, so we don't have time to talk about the Indianapolis 500, but I'll tell you, it is one of the few races I catch for the IndyCar races every year. I always like to go and watch them at Iowa Speedway. I think it's a fantastic race at Iowa Speedway. I do like watching it today at Indy, and I will be tuned in today watching it at Indy as I'm laying on my couch relaxing after working on my kitchen for so long. All right, and then the Coca-Cola 600 again coverage kicks off at about 4:30 with the green flag just after 5 o'clock Central Time on Fox tonight. Make sure your picks are in for the Pick'ems contest by 5 o'clock. And
thanks again to active service members and veterans.
Absolutely. We'll be back next weekend with Johnny Gibson, announcer for the World of Outlaws, to get you set for the June 13th race at Eagle Raceway. Again, we'll be back next weekend to do it all over again. This has been The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
Tonight, the Stars and Stripes will wave.
And the green, white, and checkered. It's the 9th annual Cookies Barbecue Sauce Charlie Clark Memorial.
Spend the holiday weekend with the area's best stock car, modified, and sprint car drivers at Nebraska's premier racetrack. Adult tickets at $15.
Kids, just $5. Located just off Interstate 80 at exit 420.
Get your adrenaline pumping tonight with the 9th annual Cookies Barbecue Sauce Charlie Clark Memorial at I-80 Speedway.
Be there.
The official watering hole of the Front Stretch has you covered any day of the week with the best wings, great burgers, and amazing steaks. Each weekday from 4 to 6 is happy hour, featuring $1 off draft and well drinks plus $4 Luberitas. Mondays are kids' night. Tuesdays are all-you-can-eat wings for $12.95, and the lube even delivers to the Council Bluffs area. Like Quaker Steak and Lube Council Bluffs on Facebook for a full list of weekly events.
Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Mid-America Drive, Council Bluffs.
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located just north of Bass Pro Shop, Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 100 plus people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team building, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.